Just look at this standard enterprise procurement screen. When you evaluate 3 different vendors for a major contract, the most obvious differentiator is usually sitting right at the top of the page. The lowest quote tends to drive the conversation, but an attractive price tag often obscures the variables that actually derail projects. A raw dollar amount tells you absolutely nothing about a vendor's regulatory standing, their operational stability, or their reputational risk in the broader market. To assess those external risks, organizations pull in outside data. The problem arises months or years later when an audit occurs. Standard internal emails and local server folders simply cannot prove a definitive, unalterable history of exactly what external evidence was available to the decision-makers at that specific moment in time. An organization needs a way to determine the best risk-adjusted value using evidence that can be independently verified. And it needs to lock that decision history down so tightly that no one can quietly alter the records after the fact. A secure system has to start by protecting the organization's most sensitive materials. Quoted prices, technical suitability scores, negotiated terms, and proprietary blueprints are strictly confidential. Enterprise intelligence isolates every piece of this private data entirely within the enterprise-controlled environment. These internal documents never touch the public data layer, and they are never broadcast onto a blockchain. Trust in this workflow begins with a strict boundary. We safeguard the internal inputs behind corporate firewalls, leaving only the external, public intelligence layer to be discovered and verified by the system. Because the open web is filled with outdated and inaccurate information, the first step is finding reliable data. The system deploys an initial layer of AI specifically to discover candidate public sources that are relevant to our selected vendors. This matrix shows how the AI evaluates those candidate sources. It actively scores them against 5 criteria: authority, provenance, relevance, freshness, and corroboration. The output is a highly structured, ranked list of preferred sources, prioritizing official registries over unknown sites. It is important to note the boundary here. The AI is not declaring that the text on a given website is the absolute truth. This first layer of AI source intelligence acts strictly as a filter. Its only job is to determine which supported sources are actually appropriate candidates for cryptographic verification. Once a trusted external source is selected, it gets routed through the Flared Data Connector, or FDC, via a web-to-JSON request. This is the bridge between the open web and verifiable execution. Looking at the verification flow in this diagram, the external response travels through the FDC attestation process. It captures the data and returns a response bundled with a Merkle proof. Notice what's absent. The FDC isn't evaluating vendor quality or fact-checking the internet. The sole purpose of the FDC is to establish an unbroken, mathematically verifiable connection between the external web source and your enterprise application. With the external data securely attested, a second, entirely distinct AI process is triggered to interpret that newly verified evidence. The technical division of labor here is exact. The Flared Data Connector verified the external response. Now, the AI interprets what that specific evidence actually means for your organization. This side-by-side vendor matrix shows the result. The AI translates the raw verified data into clear risk profiles, scoring regulatory, corporate, and operational factors. It then outputs a distinct overall risk score, a confidence level, and a final AI recommendation. That recommendation doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It remains permanently linked to the specific cryptographic evidence that was used to generate it. By tethering the analysis directly to verifiable data, AI evidence intelligence prevents the model from acting as a black box. You always know exactly why the recommendation was made. Even with clear evidence, the AI's recommendation must first be checked against the enterprise's own internal procurement policies and risk thresholds to ensure compliance. The AI has zero authority to execute a decision. It can only suggest an action based on the data. The final call requires an authorized human executive to review the compliant recommendation and formally approve the choice using a corporate smart account. The smart account acts as the vital enforcement layer. It ensures that no amount of verified intelligence can ever bypass deliberate human authorization. The moment the executive signs off, the authorization instantly generates a trust receipt. Focusing on the bottom of this architecture, you can see what the trust receipt binds together. It compiles vendor candidates, source assessments, FTC evidence, AI findings, policy versions, and execution details. Any sensitive findings are fully encrypted and access controlled, ensuring unauthorized parties cannot read the private context. Finally, a cryptographic hash of this trust receipt is anchored to the Flare blockchain, locking the state of the decision in time. We aren't forcing a traditional business to migrate its operations onto a blockchain. We are using the network to lock an authorized decision into a tamper-evident piece of institutional memory. Let's jump forward 3 years. A new corporate board is now sitting down and auditing that original 2026 vendor selection. Instead of hunting through fragmented email threads or questioning retired executives, the auditor simply retrieves the trust receipt to reconstruct the exact context of the historical decision. The board can review a complete, verified timeline. They see exactly what public sources were known at the time, what evidence was cryptographically verified, what the AI concluded, and which executive explicitly authorized the contract. With enterprise intelligence, an organization is entirely free to authorize new decisions and change its future actions, but it is mathematically prevented from quietly rewriting its history.